Click the link to join the channel here over at SubScribe. Right now over to Odyssey. So the Crow can't be remade, but don't let that stop them. Oh, it's kind of disrespectful to the original cast, one of whom passed away. Yeah, we're gonna do it anyway. Oh, that's just kind of par for the course. So the Crow, Daredevil, Batman, the Punisher, there was a whole list of those kind of lower level characters that went after lower level bad guys as opposed to the upper level gods firing lightning bolts, Wonder Woman and Thor and whatnot. But political correctness, i.e. Bolshevism, kills everything. And if you're an SJW listening to this, well, don't. But deep down, you have to know that political correctness is just making you a slave to this globalist machine, these external people telling you what you may consider, what ideas what art you may consume and produce. And it's bizarre that so many people have just jumped on board this, like letting the government and the media set the narrative for them to tell them what's politically correct. And there's a weird thing on the left is where they reach a consensus much more often, and you go, but in every other capacity of life, consensus seems to produce absolute crap. Hey, NASA, how's that the diversity, inclusion, and equity working out for you? That some NASA chick just was doing this video about how much NASA hates white people. You go, wait a minute. Don't you have 2 people stranded in space for like months that you're gonna need Elon Musk and SpaceX to go rescue? Yeah, whatever, but let me tell you about our diversity, inclusion, and equity. Like, how about you just go on merit? No. Merit is like a white concept. Yeah, and that's a good thing. All these things are good things. Anyway, where's it going to? So the America of the original Crow was much different, 1994, and it is gone forever. The 90s, there was a lot of fun movies in the 90s. I think the 80s was kind of peak silly fun kids movies, but the 90s had a lot of good stuff too. There was entire Hollywood vibes that just can't be made today because of political correctness and the massive demographic change that are somewhat related. Movies arise out of a background matrix. What are the conditions and the relations of the country at the time of the movie? And if you think I'm exaggerating, though I'm not, on political correctness ruining films, and if you're an SJW, you're just lying to yourself. You've been victims. Like, I don't hate the whole BLT SJW crowd, because they're victims of this massive psyop, and they're going to wake up from this and go, oh, I can't believe I sterilized myself. What was I thinking? Why didn't anyone stop me? Yeah, those Nazis were trying to stop you. Oh. Anyway, so the movies arise out of a background. If go back and watch movies from like even 10 years, I was going to say 20 or more years ago, and carefully look for little details that the Tumblr, the TikTok crowd, the Twitter SJWs would whine and virtue signal about now. Like, don't just watch the movie. Kind of get a piece of paper and start ticking off little pieces. You go, oh, I guess they probably wouldn't do that today because it would be offensive to this one group, or these, these whiny little emo girls on their period on Twitter would get upset about fat shaming or some nonsense, just Alinsky Frankfurt School type of thing. The problem with all these little politically incorrect details is like things like the use of a funny slur. Well, that's the spice of the movie, and when you remove those, you end up with just vanilla, globalist approved propaganda. It's like there's just a plain baked potato. There's not a whole lot going on there. But the other thing is that deep down, nobody really believes the Larry Fink, Klaus Schwab, World Economic Forum diet type of stuff, because it's all Frankfurt School insanity. What do the emo crowd want? They want a good-looking dude with cheekbones and a jawline to be kind of a Batman character and run around doing cool things. The thing is, like, people consciously know what they want, and then what they say is subconsciously they know what they want, but they're conscious. They have to virtue signal, and they're not. They're just lying. Where if you kind of start out politically incorrect, a far right-wing Hugo Boss, you can just be honest if someone's asking your opinion. You go, oh, this diverse cancer and feminism, it just won't sell. It's like, let's But you ask for opinions. Like, do you want an honest opinion, or do you want me to, just gaslight you? So the thing is, they don't see the movies that they claim to want all this representation and diversity. Yeah, that's crap. That's gag. That, and it's like, you can say these things and offend these people, and I don't see the movies, but they say something different, but they still don't see the movies. So who has the moral high ground? I think it's me. And subconsciously, they know something's wrong with the narrative because they say one thing. And for example, go look at a movie that was recently huge, Barbie. You had lectures on communism or something about vaginas, and then you had two of the blondest ubermensch Aryan central casting on screen, Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling, who everyone loves, right? So you could probably edit out the woke POC lectures in the movie and have a better movie, or use computers to remove the BLT. There was a BLT guy in there, and the POCs, and just kind of swap them out, like reverse race swap them. Would I think that would be great? And you could probably even change dialogue and make yourself a much improved movie. Even make it politically incorrect. That'd be fucking hysterical. The 90s was probably the last clear working configuration for the country. After 9/11, it kind of fell apart and it never got back on track again. And you had these silly little subcultures of emo or goth or witchcraft. And The Crow was one of these movies that worked with the audience at the time. And one of the reasons you can't remake something is because there are too many subcultures today. People are into these online spaces and they're in much smaller groups. And when you're trying to market to an audience, that makes things, there's an economy of scale that you can't replicate with small groups. Where 25, 30 years ago, there were fewer options, so people were on the same page way more than they are now. The country is just too diverse now, ethnically diverse, but also ideologically, that it's rare to get unified on anything. A third of the country doesn't even use English as its first language, so you try to market across that, and it's just impossible. It makes the success of the past, you're never going to be able to replicate that in terms of percentages. So I went on streaming and I took a look at the top 20 shows, and I kind of looked through some of them, and they're horrible, don't get me wrong, but the difference is now, I mean like, there felt like TV shows or movies that you'd make in college, a college film course or something. The difference is there are 100 times as many shows now as there were 30 years ago. And if you go back long enough, how many people were familiar with the Dallas, so some TV show from the 80s? Most of the country was familiar with that. And then you go up a decade to Sex and the City, and it's a much smaller percentage, but it's still very saturated. But now things just don't usually saturate the market like they used to, because the demographics keep growing. The non-white audience keeps growing, and they're into their own shows, and it doesn't cross culture. There's a critical mass that's required for things to catch on and break through to the larger audience. And in the 90s, the country was mostly a European, and then you had a black sub-audience. And people were able to market to that very easily. And today, the European audience is disappearing, and the Spanish is replacing it. So now you've got to market to a country that's just made of too many tribes, and none of it works. And I mean, there's the real world that's intruding on the movie world, where people go to the movies to escape the real world, where you've had 4 years of rioting based on different tribal identities. And what you had, like the goth thing that kind of caught on in the 80s and 90s, and I think that that might have started with The Cure in the early 80s or late 70s. It could you had something like that, it could reach critical mass, and it would support a movie subculture, which is orders of magnitude more expensive. And it's just probably, the country's just too diverse now. And then you add in the need to force diversity and politically correct Bolshevik talking points, and nothing in these movies makes sense. If you make a movie for everybody but the original goth girls, then it sucks. Hollywood has always been globalist propaganda. The difference is how heavy-handed it is. Things felt more organic 30 years ago, and if you go back even further, they weren't. Not even 30 years ago, but they were closer. And if you want an example of propaganda that's hidden very well, watch Fight Club, Blazing Saddles, and Pulp Fiction, and watch it with the They Live sunglasses on, and suddenly you'll see propaganda that you just missed the first time you saw that. Now Hollywood is they're not even trying to be subtle. They're just mask off, and it's all sodomy and anti-white racism. And Hollywood has almost always been diverse, even with the original Crow, but it was just approached differently. And I mean, what was it? Blade, the Blade trilogy with the guy went to prison for like tax fraud or something with Martha Stewart. I forget his name now, and he was just in that Wolverine and Deadpool movie. He said there's only been one Blade, which is funny because they're going to try to replace him with his daughter or something. In the Wesley Snipes, is that Wesley Snipes? In one of the new movies, and it's like, well, that'll bomb if you try to do that. It's like, well, we're going to do it anyway. Yeah, great. Now Hollywood has painted themselves in a corner with woke, and the best example is Rings of Power, which I think the second season starts tomorrow, so we can watch that somehow. It's Rings of Power is absolutely freaking insane. The thing is, not necessarily everything is woke now, but many things are perceived as woke, so people don't bother with them because Hollywood has made such a strong association with non-whites being Mary Sues and vagina people being completely insufferable, and 120-pound chicks just being able to beat up a room full of superheroes. And anyway, in sum, I think you're going to see more smaller movies that are made for different tribes and fewer movies that cross across audiences. Wolverine and Deadpool is a good example of a mediocre movie that made a lot of money because everything else is just Larry Fink globalist checklist approved type of stuff, or it's perceived to be. And that's the same thing like Madam Web. People didn't even give that movie a shot just because you're like, 3 chicks. It follows a line of chick movies that failed. The ones immediately before that was The Marvels with Brie Larson, and it was also 3 chick movies. And then, I don't know, Charlie's Angels was a few years before that. And there's a bunch of these kind of like Elements or Elemental with the Angelina Jolie and Salma Hayek. It's like, how well did that movie do? Oh, it friggin' bombed. How well did Black Widow do? Oh, it didn't even break even. Keep doing more of these, you'll make it up in volume. That doesn't make sense. Yeah, but Hollywood's not about money. They're about ideology. It is a religion, just as much as James Jones cruising around South America, drinking the Kool-Aid. The funny thing about Jim Jones was that was a diverse cult. It was kind of interesting. It was people, all different types of people who were drinking the Kool-Aid. So, yay, diversity. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys all next episode.